Pearl Harbor by air.
Ask not what your country can do.
President Kennedy has been shot.
One small step for man.
It proves to be self-evident that all men are created equal.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
The transforming events of the 20th century touched every city and small town in America. Annual celebrations which children thrill to but can never fully understand mark for another generation the historical reminders. How the town survived the Depression. How older people who walk among us unnoticed every day save democracy in the world. In every town there are buildings which stand like silent witnesses to the enormous changes over these 100 years. A garage which started the century as a stable.
When the Model Ts became available, we could scratch together $100 and get a second-hand Model T.
Schools, which today teach computer skills to every student, used to teach shop to the boys and typing to the girls.
A school teacher said, just learn all you can about secretarial work. We can't expect women to get ahead in business.
In some places, hometown coffee shops for more than half the century served whites only.
People's attitudes had to be changed. And all it was the color of your skin, for Christ's sakes. It was the color of your skin that made the difference.
Memorials along American main streets commemorate those who died on the European battlefields of World War I.
Such terrible scenes. You grew up very quickly in surroundings like that. It was no longer freshman studies. It was the real world.
From almost every hometown train station, men left for World War II.
When your husband becomes an officer, you're an officer's wife. And you do not show any emotions when they go overseas. You hold it back no matter what. No crying. And we did that. It was tough, but we did it.
Korea and Vietnam veterans returned to towns which looked the same, but they came back to a country which had changed.
When I left, the only people that had long hair were lived in San Francisco, you know, and when I came home, my banker had long hair.
When one New Jersey town held an all-class reunion in 1997, you could see in the attendees the sweep of the entire century. There were those who remember when the electric light was new, and those who were born after man walked on the moon. Old and young, they had been together on a journey through the most common and yet mysterious of passageways. Time. Unlike previous centuries where leadership was defined by royalty and other rulers, the 20th century, more than any other, was shaped by the will and actions of the common man. In the episodes of this series, we'll examine some of the defining events in each of 15 different periods. Our aim is to experience what it was like for the common man to be alive then. Politics and technology made this the killing century, but they also provided extended life and hope. In this first episode, we'll see that as the century began, there was no place on earth where hope flourished more than in the United States of America. In 1900, in the countries of Central and Southern Europe, tens of millions of people were trapped in miserable lives.
They were starving, and things were real tough because when my father was a young boy at 12 or 13 years old, he was sent to a family in Cairo, Egypt, to become a vassal. That's what they did with their sons.
Peasants, they never got paid, they never made a living, they lived in huts. The Jewish people certainly were poverty-stricken, they didn't have a darn thing.
My people came from peasants. My grandparents on both sides of the family came from Sicily. My mother's side of the family came from a town called Cimina. In the small villages, what was there? Oppression and no food.
One place held the promise of a better future.
My mother and father, they heard about America from others, and they knew that America was heaven. It was once in America, all problems would be solved. There would be food, there would be freedom, there would be no persecution. Freedom, freedom. An incredible word for those people.
This country is in a state of unexampled prosperity. We are furnishing profitable employment to the millions of working men throughout the United States.
By 1900, the United States leads in every major industrial product. I mean, we're producing more steel, we're producing more machine goods, textiles. The United States has 1/3 of all the railroad trackage in the world. For the first time in human history, people can move over land swiftly, easily, reliably.
The average American lived longer, was better fed and better paid, and had greater access to education than the average citizen anywhere else on earth.
This is the great land of opportunity. No matter how low you may be born, no matter how humble you may be, you can rise to the top. The sky is the limit.
On the eve of the new century, the sense of boundless possibilities also ignited an explosion of technological innovations that would have profound impact on 20th century life. Thomas Edison's electric light bulb and phonograph, Alexander Graham Bell's telephone. Tens of thousands of tinkerers across America were trying to invent the future. Among them were two bicycle mechanics in Dayton, Ohio.
Orville and Wilbur, they as young boys were interested in flying. They would sit on the porch and watch the birds. And the neighbors all around us say, I don't know what they think they're going to do, why they will never make an aeroplane.
Mabel Greep and her sister Lorene lived next door to the Wright brothers.
Well, my father found out some way that they were going to have a trial flight. So we got in the Surrey and we drove out to Huffman Prairie.
I can hear Dad turn more than once and say, look, are you all paying attention to this? Now listen to me. You're going to remember this till your last day. When that plane took off the ground, People were speechless. It was spectacular. It was unbelievable.
One of the oldest dreams in human imagination had come true: sustained flight in a powered aeroplane.
The United States was without question the most inventive nation in the world in that period. It is comparable in its creativity to the Renaissance in Italy, for example, to the period of Elizabeth in English history, the Shakespearean period. Americans appreciated the new. They assumed that change was the natural course of history.
And on America's roads, the European novelty was about to be reinvented.
The first time we saw a car when I was a kid, well, that was for people out of this world.
In 1900, there were only 8,000 cars and less than 10 miles of concrete road in the entire country. The car was fast seducing Americans.
The automobile gave people a sense of the control of their own destiny. That is, behind the wheel, out on the road, you decided where you were going, what you were doing. You had a machine at your control.
But early cars were fantastically expensive. The Artsberger, made in Pittsburgh, and the Pierce Arrow were really toys for the rich people. Until one manufacturer in Detroit saw it differently. Henry Ford.
He saw the automobile as a way to relieve one of the burden of working in nature by the sweat of one's brow. He was motivated by the desire to put the automobile into the hands of first farmers and then generally into the hands of ordinary people in the population. He wanted to produce many, many, many automobiles in a short time. Ford had this vision of smooth flow using an assembly line. These components were coming from up here. These components were on an endless lift. These components were coming on a belt, and everything is in motion. And I think the image of a number of streams flowing into a river captures the assembly line concept.
Henry Ford's Model T was introduced in 1908 at the price of $825.
I think it would have been considered un-American in his eyes to produce an automobile for rich people. That's what foreigners do. Americans generally were committed to the proposition that every man and every woman should enjoy material abundance. That was the American spirit. That's America.
It was the promise of material abundance and freedom which drew more than 13 million impoverished Europeans to America between 1900 and 1914. They came from the Austro-Hungarian Empire, from Russia, and from Italy. It was the greatest free migration in all of human history.
My mother's mother, Domenica, was afraid to travel on the boat. And the only way they got her on the boat was her brother tricked her. He went on the boat with her and said he was going with her. And at the last minute, she turned away and he left.
My mother came by herself through Siberia. She got to the coast and got on a boat. They were just sitting